The tools we'll be using today are wire cutters, flush cut type work best, a ruler, a ring mandrel. I'm using a metal one, but if you have a plastic one, that's fine too. Needle nose pliers, round nose pliers, and I'm using a needle tool, but if you have an awl that has a very thin needle on it, or even a sewing straight pin, that'll work as well. For this project, we'll be using a very long piece of wire to start. The first piece will be about 7 feet. And to make it easier to work with, what I've found works best is a plastic sewing bobbin. It's lightweight, so it doesn't drag the wire anywhere. There's a small hole in there, you loop it through, you push it through there, then you put on a pencil eraser and just spin it. And that will coil it without hardening the wire too much for you to work with. We're going to start this project with 7 feet of 28 gauge wire and 3 7-inch pieces of 20 gauge wire. Now you want to hold 20 gauge wire, all 3 pieces together, and get the end even. You're going to start weaving 1 3/4 inches up from the end. Now to start the weave, just wrap the 28 gauge wire around the first 20 gauge wire about 3 or 4 times. Then you pass it underneath the middle wire, up between the second and third wires, and then wrap the third wire twice. Then bring it back up between the second and third wires, over the middle wire, down between the first and second wire, and wrap it around the first wire twice. Now again, that's under the second wire or the middle wire, up between the second and third wires, around the third wire twice, then back up between the second and third wire, down between the first and second wire, and around the first wire twice. And you'll continue weaving this way until you get to the correct size for the ring that you want to make. And we'll go over that in just a moment. Now to make this video go quicker, I do have another one already made. Oh, the woven portion already made. Anyway. Now, for the size you want, it is an adjustable ring, but if you take a smaller ring and you try to stretch it out to fit a larger size, you can see the swirls no longer meet correctly. So to correct for that, we just do different size ranges. For up to a 7-inch ring, you'll need to weave 3 inches from here to here. For 7 to 9, 3 1/4 inches. And for 9 to 11, 3 1/2 inches. If you need up to a 13, you would go 4 inches. What I'm going to do is just wrap it around an extra couple of times. Let me flip that over. I'm going to clip it as close as I can to the frame wire. And then what you want to do to make sure it's not sticking out is just sort of press it down with the needle nose pliers. And what you can also do is, once you're holding the wire down, you kind of rotate it just a little bit, and that'll burnish it down against the 20 gauge wire. And then you want to do the same thing for the beginning tail wire as well. You might have to open those wires up a little bit in order to get to it though. For this next part here, I'm starting with a piece of 28 gauge wire that's about 2 feet long. I'm actually going to put it on the middle wire this time, and that's one of the things I love about these rings. You can use pretty much any swirl pattern. I don't think I've ever made any two of them that are exactly alike, because they're really great for freeform swirls and stuff. And you can also use different weaves for them too. Now I'm going to start this the same way I started the first weaving wire. Just wrap it around a few times. Now what you need to do is take the second and third wires and kind of curve them both over at the same time. For this one, I think I'm going to do 10 wraps around this wire, which is the outer curved wire, and then wrap around both of them twice. So I've got 5 wraps on there, so do 5 more. And I'm going to wrap around both the 2 wires. And just keep repeating that pattern. And as you weave that, you want to curve it a little bit more, because you want that a little bit tighter than it was. And then just continue weaving. Okay, now at this point I want to attach this to this part. I'm going to use the weaving wire to do that. So what you need to do, this is where the needle comes in. Just kind of wiggle it in there a little bit, just enough to make some room for that 28 gauge wire to go into it. Stick that right into that hole you made there. And pull it through. You do need to be careful that you don't get any kinks. It might be easier to kind of push it through with your thumb as you pull with the rest of your hand. what you need to do here is make another hole. Okay, but you have to go underneath that middle wire. Okay, actually I didn't explain that very well before. This first time we went through, we went between the second and third frame wires facing away from you. We went between those. Now we need to come up between the first and second ones. So just create another little hole right there. And you push the wire right back through there. And again, you just try to keep it from kinking or twisting. Then you continue with the weave again. At this point though, you want to curve it back the other way. So it comes back onto the shank portion of the ring. And continue that weave till you get back to the other side here, right there. And once you get back to where the weave is even with the side of the shank, we just need to secure that one more time. We're going to split the two 20 gauge wires a little bit to make it easier. Just wiggle that needle in there. Just enough to open up the weave. You don't want to accidentally distort the wires. Push that through there. And since it's close enough to the frame wire, we only need to go through, since it's close enough to the edge of that first wire, you can just wrap it around like that. Now, before we continue coiling, I'm going to cut this about 1/4 of an inch away from that last part where the two wires were wrapped together. And I'm just going to use my round nose pliers and make a tiny little spiral there. It'll actually look more like a loop, but it's close enough. Just go ahead and coil a little bit farther now. That's about 1/4 inch past the last place it was attached to the frame. I'm going to go ahead and clip that. And then I'm going to cut the 20 gauge wire about 1/8 of an inch past the end of the coil. I need to press the end of that 28 gauge wire down again. And make another spiral here. piece from the beginning of the weaving wire there too. For this next part here, I'm starting with about 18 inches of 28 gauge wire. I'm just going to put it on the wire the same way I did for the weaves. Just wrap it around a few times, and that'll keep it secure. But actually for this wire, I'm just going to coil it. There's no weaving here, so. So you just wrap the 28 gauge wire around the 20 and try to keep pushing those little coils close together. At this point, go ahead and clip the beginning tail wire. Just keep that out of the way while we work now. And you want to go ahead and shape this wire as you coil it. Just bringing it so it sits inside the weave from the last two wires. Just let it kind of curl up a little bit because it's just going to spiral it inside itself right here. Now as the coil gets to this edge right here, we're going to go ahead and secure it the same way we did this coil here. Just go ahead and make a little room there with your needle. Push the 28 gauge wire through there. Sorry if that went out of focus for a moment. Bring it back up and keep coiling. And go ahead and keep shaping that. And I do want to secure that one more time. And I'm going to secure it to this spot right here. That'll be the easiest place to secure it. I'm going to let it kind of go inside of there a little bit first. And just push it right into there. Wrap it around that coiled wire. And then bring it up and start coiling again. You need maybe a little over 1/4 inch of a coil for this part. You know, past that attachment, I mean. as you're coiling, try not to let the wires overlap any of the previous coils. Okay, that's about right. We're going to go ahead, cut that one, and cut it about 1/8 of an inch past the coil. And press that down a little bit. Now with your round nose pliers, just go ahead and make a little curl, and then bring it on around and tuck it inside that loop we made with the coil. And we're going to do basically the same thing on the other side now. So starting with about 2 feet, 28 gauge wire again. I'm going to start on the middle wire, and I'm going to do 10 wraps here. Then I'm going to wrap both of those wires together. Wrap around those twice, and then coil around the middle wire 10 times again. I'm going to go ahead and snip off that beginning wire again. Just get it out of the way. And we're going to go ahead and do the same kind of curve that we did on the other side. And we're going to continue with the weave again. This looks like a good point to attach it. Now we're going to do this the same way we did the first attachment on this side, and that is how it goes down between two of the frame wires and underneath the middle wire, and then back up between the first two frame wires. So open that up a little bit, just make a little bit of space there. And go ahead and push the 28 gauge wire down through there. And that's between the second and third frame wires. Then make another space right here between the first and second frame wires, and that's where you bring this wire back up. And then just continue weaving from there. And curve it back around as you go. And then here we're going to attach it again to the side of the shank wires here. So just make another little spot in there for the weave, and for the wire to go through, I mean. And this one's being a little bit stubborn. Pull that through and bring it back up the side, and then just go ahead and keep coiling. About 1/4 of an inch will do for that. And cut about 1/8 of an inch from the end of the coil. Cut this wire about 1/4 of an inch from that part where they're wrapped together. Those 2 spirals real quick now. Now we're going to get about 18 inches or so of the 28 gauge wire again. And we're going to go ahead and start this coil the same way we did on the other side. Once you get enough of it on there that's secure, you can go ahead and cut off the beginning wire. And then continue to coil. same way we did the other side. So it sits inside that weave right there. And at this point we need to go ahead and attach it to the shank. Once we get up towards the top of that coil again, just wrap the two wires together. Then just go a little over 1/4 of an inch past that attachment. That should be about right. And we're going to finish this wire off the same we did the rest of them. Clip it short, clip the 20 gauge about 1/8 of an inch away from the coil. Go ahead and press that down. And shape that into a spiral. And just sort of push that down inside itself there. When you shape an adjustable ring, it's actually easier to shape it smaller than you need to be and then stretch it out so it's a little bit bigger. So I'm going to start way up here at the top of the mandrel with the smaller sizes. And you want to wrap it, set the swirl, the outside of the swirl goes in opposite directions. Now there's going to be those spots like that right there where it kind of wants to come out. Just go ahead and push that down. And if there's anywhere else that's doing it, do it there too. Then just stretch it out to the size you need it. You may actually need to go just a little bit farther past the size you need, and then it'll kind of come right back to where you want it. And there you have it.